You ever stop and think about how fragile history is? I mean, we picture it as this grand, inevitable story, right? But what if it's not like that at all? What if some of the biggest moments in our past turned on something tiny, a moment of pride, a slip of the tongue, or get this, a bear? Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, you heard me, a bear. And we are absolutely going to talk about how a bear almost kicked off World War III. But to get there, we got to wrap our heads around a pretty wild idea about how history actually works.
See, this is what I'm talking about. History isn't this perfect, straight line. It's messy. It stumbles. It's basically just a huge, fragile chain of accidents and stuff nobody saw coming. It's way more chaos than control. And you know what the most common thing is that kicks off that whole chain reaction? A simple, very human flaw.
Yep, we're starting with ego. Good old human pride. We're going to look at those moments when someone's arrogance, their overconfidence, made them do something, well, something catastrophic, without having a clue what they were about to unleash.
Okay, look at this. The insult versus the response. It's insane, right? So picture this. It's the early 1200s. Genghis Khan sends some diplomats over to the Khwarezmian Empire, basically to say, hey, let's trade. But the Shah there, in this just unbelievable act of arrogance, he kills one of the envoys, and then sends his head back to Genghis Khan. Now, for the Mongols, this was the worst insult imaginable, the absolute worst. So what was the response? Oh, just a full-scale invasion that didn't just beat the empire, it completely wiped it off the map. Millions dead, and it's what pushed the Mongols all the way toward Europe. All of that because one guy's ego was too big to accept a message.
All right, let's jump forward a couple hundred years. Ego shows up again, but this time it looks more like being short-sighted. So the Byzantine Empire, which, let's be honest, is kind of on its last legs at this point, gets a visit from an engineer. His name is Orban, and he's got something amazing, a brand new, groundbreaking super cannon. The problem? The empire is totally broke. So they tell him, sorry, can't afford it. And look, on the face of it, you can kind of see why they'd make that call, right? A tough but practical money decision.
Well, here's the thing. Orban just packed up his plans and took them to the next guy in line, the Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II. And Mehmed, he took one look and immediately got it. He saw the potential and gave Orban literally everything he asked for. And then, in 1453, that exact same cannon, the one the Byzantines said was too expensive, was used to blast a hole right through the legendary walls of Constantinople. And just like that, a 1,000-year empire was gone. Talk about being penny-wise and pound-foolish, huh? But on a, world-changing scale.
So, it's not always about pride, though. Sometimes what throws history completely off track is something way simpler and, honestly, way more common. It's just a lack of information. We're talking about the information gap, those moments where one misunderstood word or one tiny missing detail sets off this chain reaction of mistakes that nobody can put the brakes on.
This right here, this is one of the weirdest moments of the entire 20th century. You've got this East German official, Günter Schabowski, giving a press conference. It's kind of boring, business as usual. He gets handed a note about some new travel rules, but here's the key. He hasn't actually read it or been told what it means. So when a reporter asks, hey, what does this go into effect? He kind of shuffles his papers, can't find the answer, and just wings it. He says, as far as I know, immediately. Immediately, that one word, just blurted out, spreads like wildfire. All over East Berlin, people hear it and think, wait, the wall is open? For the first time in 28 years? So they all just start running to the checkpoints. The guards are totally confused, they have no new orders, but with these massive crowds showing up, they just open the gates. And that's it. The Berlin Wall comes down, all because of one confused guy at a press conference.
All right, time to talk about the bear. I promised, and here we are. This next story, it takes this whole information gap idea and dials the stakes up to like a terrifying new level. Because this one isn't about a wall coming down. It's about the whole world almost ending.
Okay, so set the scene. It's the middle of the night, right at the peak of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Probably the most tense moment of the entire Cold War. A guard at an airbase in Duluth sees a shadow climbing the fence. He thinks it's a Soviet saboteur, so he opens fire and slams the sabotage alarm. That signal automatically goes out to all the other bases in the area. Now here's the problem. Over at Volk Field in Wisconsin, there's a tiny wiring mistake. So when they get the signal, it doesn't come through as a sabotage alarm. It comes through as a nuclear scramble alarm, the signal to take off and start World War III. Can you just imagine being one of those pilots? You've been on high alert for days. You've been explicitly told there will be no drills. So in your mind, this is it. This is real. The war has started. Their jets, armed with nuclear weapons, are racing down the runway. But then, one officer realizes something is wrong. He jumps in his car, speeds onto the runway, and physically blocks the planes, flashing his lights like a madman to get them to stop. He saved the world at the last possible second. And the Soviet saboteur that started this whole mess? It was just a black bear trying to climb a fence. The entire world came within a hair's breadth of nuclear Armageddon because of a bear and some bad wiring. Just wow.
All right, for our last section, let's talk about the domino effect. You know what I mean? It's when one tiny little action, and sometimes it's even something someone did with the best intentions, sets off this chain reaction that just spirals out of control into something totally unexpected and, yeah, often catastrophic.
So this right here, this is the cascade of pure dumb luck and error that started World War I. So the Archduke, Franz Ferdinand, is in Sarajevo. An assassin tries to bomb his car, but it fails. So his security detail says, okay, we're changing the route to be safe. Smart, right? Except for one critical mistake, nobody bothered to tell the driver of the Archduke's car. So what does he do? He takes the original, planned turn. Someone yells at him that he's going the wrong way, so he stops the car and tries to back up, stalling it right in the middle of the street. And who just happens to be standing on that corner, having just given up on the whole assassination plot and decided to go buy a sandwich? The assassin, Gavrilo Princip. He literally couldn't believe his luck. He's handed a perfect, stationary target right in front of him. A single wrong turn, a message that never got delivered, and boom. The first domino of World War I tips over.
Now here's a twist. What if the mistake isn't seen as a mistake at all? What if, at the time, it was hailed as a genius solution? Let me introduce you to Thomas Midgley Jr. This guy was an inventor who tackled two of the biggest industrial problems of his era. First, he figured out that if you add lead to gasoline, it stops car engines from making that awful knocking sound. Problem solved. Then he invented Freon, this amazing non-toxic chemical that was perfect for refrigerators and air conditioners. The guy was a hero, celebrated everywhere as a genius of modern chemistry.
But you can probably guess where this is going. The long-term consequences were an absolute disaster. We now know that all that leaded gasoline caused decades of global lead poisoning, seriously damaging the health of millions and millions of people. And Freon, his other brilliant invention? Turns out it's a chlorofluorocarbon, a CFC, and it was literally ripping a giant hole in the Earth's ozone layer. As one historian put it, Midgley had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in Earth's history, and not in a good way. Two brilliant solutions that turned into two global environmental catastrophes.
Okay, so we've looked at ego, at information gaps, at these crazy domino effects. What's the big takeaway here? What does all this tell us about how we should think about the past and maybe even the present?
I think the main thing is this. History is so much more fragile, so much more random and unpredictable than our history books make it seem. It's a really good reminder that these huge, world-changing events often have really small, really messy beginnings. A moment of arrogance, a throwaway comment, a wrong turn. These aren't just little side stories or footnotes. They are the actual hinges that history swings on.
And that kind of brings us to one last thought to leave you with. If the past can be changed so easily by such tiny moments, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Right now, as we're all just going about our day, what seemingly small thing is happening that people 100 years from now will look back on and say, that was the moment it all changed? What's the nuclear bear of our generation? It's kind of wild to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.